Veronica presents Part 4 of the AI Repertory Theater's production of Lorene on the Lam by Marie Elena Zuniga. As you might remember, Lorene has picked up another lost soul, a strange little man, a deaf-mute Bible salesman by the name of Benjamin Splatt. She had a bad feeling about him. She had to get rid of him, and Tilly Davis.
Back in 1986, Livy McClune discovered where Mac Johnson went all those times up on Big Gap Bluff. She watched as Mac disappeared into the yawning mouth of Indian Cave. Let's look in and see what's happening in Red Boiling Springs. Chapter 13. Spring 1987. Red Boiling Springs. The sky was stained with pinks and purples when Sammy McClune got in from work. He'd had another hard day at the Piggly Wiggly, dealing with customers who couldn't tell a cucumber from a cantaloupe, complaining that the greens were wilted around the edges. His pot-bellied boss had scolded him today that the produce section wasn't up to snuff and kept him after hours. Now he couldn't follow Mac. It was a Thursday evening, the day Mac Johnson usually trekked some distance past their house and up the steep hill to Big Gap Bluff. Sammy knew the route well, had known it since both he and Nathan, Mac's son, were kids. They were of the same age and grew up together. It was Nathan who had told him about his daddy's secret. They had gone to that black cave one night as kids. Scared Sammy silly, but he saw that mysterious case. He remembered it. Finding it was another matter. Not that he hadn't tried. He had gone back to that spot many times over the years, by himself and with Nathan, when both were teenagers. Lately, he had been watching Mac, because he had to find that case. But the old coot had hidden it someplace else in the cave. Why else would he be going there every week?
I don't know where Mac put it,
Sammy shouted to Nathan last time he called from Nashville.
He goes every week. That's all I can tell you.
Nathan was silent for a few seconds on the phone.
I have a plan.
Those words scared Sammy. He didn't trust Nathan, but the truth of it was that Sammy needed the money, and Nathan had threatened to tell his secret, ruin what little of the respectable life he had here in Red Springs. Coming in the front door, Sammy threw his hat on the side table and called for Livy. No answer. Damn his sister. She was going to be the death of him. He had never asked for this, none of it, and Lord knows he had paid his dues. But if he played his cards right, he'd be a free man, and right soon.
Livy!
He called through the back screen door. He walked around to the front yard and saw her at a distance in the shadows of the trees, straggling through the woods. What in tarnation had she been up to?
Livy! Now you come on. Here?
She was humming a tune under her breath and picking up stones. One of her pants pockets was bulging with them, weighing her down on one side. Lord knows why she did the things she did.
How long you been out there, Livy?
Couldn't rightly say.
What were you doing out there?
Not much. Ran into Mac.
Sammy bristled.
You're to stay away from him, Livy. Here?
Yes, sir.
Well, come in then,
he said in a calmer voice, taking her by the hand.
I brought us supper tonight. They had a special at the store on chicken, so I'll bake that up with some taters and cornbread. How's that sound?
Real good.
After they had eaten, he put Livy in front of the TV to watch reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies. He hated the show because it made fun of his people. But for whatever reasons, it seemed to capture his sister's interest. He went outside and sat in the rocker on the front porch. The evening sky was still light, and he wondered whether he should head over to the cave or not. He decided against it, knowing that dark would fall soon. The worst place to be trapped at night would be Indian Cave. He'd just have to wait until next Thursday to follow Mac. Besides, with what Nathan had told him, it didn't matter. He had leverage. Inside, Sammy felt strangely nervous and smug at the same time. Nathan's plan could work, even though it frightened Sammy. It was risky, but he had no choice. He needed that money. Bad. Then he could leave that damn grocery store, put Livy away in an institution, and do whatever the hell he pleased. No more being trapped in this godforsaken pissant town. Soon he'd be free. Please God, soon. Very, very soon.
Chapter 14. The morning sun was high in the sky now, and outside, the heat shimmered in blinding waves from the paved road. They had driven a few miles when Lorene stopped the bus. She announced to Tilly and Splat that she wasn't going any farther. Too risky. Sure, she needed to get home to her mama as soon as she could, but it wouldn't help if they got caught. Traveling in the dark was better.
We have to wait until night. If we drive this bus during the daytime, I don't care how country the roads are, we'll draw attention like flies to honey,
Lorene said.
And what are we supposed to do in the meantime?
Tilly whined. Splat, with pad and pencil on his lap, wrote,
Pray.
Maybe that wasn't such a bad idea, Lorene thought. She had given it up years ago, even though her granddaddy Mac had always said it was a good thing to do. But what should she pray for? That she didn't get caught and get sent back to prison? That she get home in time before her mama died? That she find a way to get rid of her 2 passengers? That Tim would leave Faith and fall in love with her instead? So many prayers. So little time.
We best get outside again,
Lorene finally said.
Heat's building up in here. Tilly, why don't you go make us some lunch? Whatever you can find in the kitchen. And we'll sit outside until the sun starts to set. Also, probably best to see if we can get some sleep, as we'll be pulling an all-nighter. And who made you the boss of me?
Tilly shot back, hands on hips.
I did, ever since I decided to pick you up and save you from that rotten, no-good, low-life husband of yours.
Tilly snorted and sashayed down the aisle, back to the kitchen. Splat, it seemed, was already praying, his Bible open, smiling, nodding his head. Let him be, Lorene thought. She'd soon be rid of the 2 of them. They were outside again in the shadow of thick woods, enjoying sandwiches and iced tea all around. If anybody had driven by, they'd think they were just good country people having a picnic. Except for the huge bus parked on the side of the road that read, Josh Montgomery. That might draw some questions. Picking at the cheese in her sandwich, Tilly looked at Buffington Splat.
So, what's your story? Buffington? I mean, everybody has a story, right? And by the way, what kind of name is Buffington? I ain't never heard it before. Sounds distinguished like.
Buffington had stopped reading his Bible for once and was plucking dandelion puffs and blowing them into the air. He turned when he realized someone was speaking to him. Tilly asked the question again, saying it louder and moving her lips slowly. He began writing, something Lorene was getting used to, that scratching sound on paper, and gave it to Tilly to read aloud. Seemed that Buffington had been born in Tennessee and was named after some British ancestor. He went to deaf school his entire life, and at age 21, he was now 25, he met a man at the Church of Christ that he attended who owned a Bible store. He wanted to help Buffington and asked him if he'd like to sell Bibles. Buffington asked the same question Lorene had. How could he sell Bibles when he couldn't speak or hear? The store owner had said, God will make a way. And so Buffington had begun his career as a Bible salesman, writing his letters in pencil or ink to customers about the Word of God. Many of them took pity on him, he wrote, which actually made Bible selling easier. Lately, though, he had not been doing well, which is why he was going to meet Preacher Owens at the tent revival. He knew lots of people would be there, and he hoped to sell as many Bibles. Now, with no tent revival meeting and no customers, he wasn't sure what he was going to do. He didn't have a lick of money. That's when they had come along.
If you think we got money, mister, You're kidding yourself.
Lorraine said through a mouthful of peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Just to make herself clear, she held out her palm, drew an X over it with her finger, and shook her head. Buffington sat there, as if debating something important. His face clouded up. Then he wrote,
I'm not looking for money.
Lorraine knew he was.
Everybody's looking for money. And just 'cause you're a Bible salesman, don't make you no different.
She said hotly. Tilly was tearing off bits of bread and throwing them to nearby birds.
Geez, Lorraine, give the guy a break. He sounds like he's piss poor right now, and I know how that feels. Right now, I ain't got a cent to my name either.
The reality of having two people with her who had no money, besides herself, made Lorraine want to scream. How are they going to buy gas? Lordy, she hoped she wouldn't have to rob a store again. Surely one of them had some money on them. Buffington wrote something and held it up for them both to read.
Not only don't I have money, but I think I may not have God either.
Lorraine and Tilly exchanged glances. What was he talking about?
I thought you believed in God, selling Bibles and such.
Tilly said. Lorraine thought the same. Maybe that's why sales had been so lousy for him. Nobody could believe in a man who didn't believe in himself. Besides, what was all this talk back yonder about trusting in God's word, blah, blah, blah? And that silly-ass happy grin he always had on his face. Maybe this guy was a phony, just as she had suspected. Then Splat did something she saw her grandpa do only once, after he had slammed down the phone and looked at Lorraine. He cried. Splat was sobbing, without sound, his shoulders heaving. Lorraine had never seen a deaf-mute weep and felt that prick of compassion she had felt earlier when she picked up Tilly. Lorraine wanted to believe his tears were genuine, but when push came to shove, his weeping reminded her of Tilly's a while back. Fake through and through. Still, something powerful seemed to be hurting this man. She could tell by the amount of tears streaming down his round little face. For once, she allowed herself to feel something she had never felt in her life. She wanted to help a man. She took a quick breath and pushed that thought aside right quick, reminding herself that of all the stupid things she had done in her life, helping him or any man would be about the stupidest thing she could ever do.
Chapter 15. After Emily had gone, all kinds of thoughts swirled through Gertrude's head. She wasn't sure what to make of this news, given the letter Mac had left. Which was the truth of it? Whose bones were really in that cave? Could they be Mac's? She wished Emily had never read that newspaper article and brought it for her to see. The phone rang, startling Gertrude. No one called her these days. She warily picked up the receiver and offered a hello in a strained voice.
Miss Thigpen?
Yes, who is this?
Sorry to bother you, ma'am. It's Police Chief Tommy Purdy, over in Lafayette.
She didn't think the police would be calling her about Mac, if indeed it was Mac's bones they found in that cave. Maybe they were calling about Lorraine. Maybe she was somewhere nearby and had been stopped by the law.
Police Chief Trent in Red Boiling Springs asked us to come up there to take those remains you may heard tell about that were found over in Indian Cave.
Gertrude waited.
He figured since we're the county seat, we'd have more resources to find out.
He stopped, stumbled, and went on.
To find out who that poor feller was. We've reason to believe they might be those of Mac Johnson, who disappeared some 25 years ago. We hear you were related, in a way. There were some items left behind we thought you could identify for us.
Gertrude cleared her throat.
Listen, Purdy, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a-dyin', and in this bed and can't move.
There was silence.
Sorry, ma'am. I didn't know. Is there someone else in the family who could come over and take a look?
Gertrude explained she had no family, which was a little lie, considering Lorraine. Then she thought of Emily. She knew Mac well, and she seemed to remember better than Gertrude did what he was wearing the day he disappeared. It would be a difficult thing to identify his remains, but after all, she had saved Emily's life. After explaining to the police chief that's what she'd do, she hung up and phoned Emily, who was surprised to hear from her. She actually seemed excited about going over to Lafayette.
How you going to get there?
Gertrude asked, nervous about all this.
Why, you know old Ben Hooper uses his car as a taxi service for extra cash when need be. I'm sure he'll take me right over there. Been wanting to do some shopping anyway.
Gertrude was quiet. How could she think about shopping when she was going over to see if they had really found Mac after all these years? Emily could be strange in that way, a spinster who some wished had been left in that rubble of bricks. Now, if Sammy McClune were still around, he could drive her there. He used to work over in Lafayette, but one day he and his sister Livy just disappeared. Poof, like that. Around the same time, Mac went missing, as she recalled. Seemed to be the time such things were happening, except Sammy and Livy didn't meet a horrible end, as was suspected of Mac, but up and moved, left the house with most of the furniture still in it, and without a word to anybody. Gertrude always thought that was odd. So did the police, who went hunting the McClunes, but never found them, and decided their leaving had nothing to do with Mac's disappearance.
You there, Gertie?
Lost in thought. Might be difficult to see.
Hush up, Gertrude. I've seen death before. I'll be fine.
Well, if it doesn't put you out too much, then I guess it's settled.
Inside, Gertrude felt anything but settled. Mac had left specific instructions in his letter, and that included telling Laureen everything. She looked out the window and sighed, wishing to God her daughter would get home soon. That might solve a lot of things. Besides, she was longing to see Laureen so she could mend whatever they needed to mend. Then she could cross over into heaven onto God's golden shore, where she was sure she was going. Chapter 16. Summer 1987, Red Boiling Springs. Someone was knocking at the door, loudly. Livy didn't like strangers showing up unannounced. It was 4 p.m., but she was still in her bathrobe and slippers, her hair in greasy, stringy clumps around her shoulders. She peeked from behind the faded white curtain in the living room and saw a man standing there. Sammy had warned her about keeping the door locked to strangers. She undid the chain and looked out between the crack. He was tall, with dark hair, and though others may call her strange, she did not let it pass her by that this man was good-looking. He wore a neatly pressed, dark blue suit, white shirt and tie, and he somehow seemed familiar.
"Help you?"
She asked.
"Sorry to trouble you, ma'am, but I'm looking for one Sammy McClune."
Livy eyed him up and down, wondering why this handsome man would be looking for her brother. Something made her uneasy about this stranger, and she wasn't sure whether to tell him where Sammy was.
"Who's asking?"
The man gave her a big smile, fussing with the hat in his hand.
"It's a business matter, ma'am."
"Why'd you come here asking?"
"Oh, you know how it is in the country, ma'am. Everybody knows everybody's business. I was driving through and recalled he was from these parts. So I stopped at the gas station in town and they told me he was out in this direction. Saw the name on the mailbox yonder."
Livy may have been called crazy by some, but she had good sense about people, and something wasn't right about this man.
"Can't rightly say I know where he can be found,"
Livy finally said. The man grimaced, running a hand over his face, as if exasperated with something. Livy couldn't put her finger on it, but his speech and manners seemed familiar and forced.
"Well, I best be going then."
Livy nodded and shut the door. She kept staring through the window as he walked down to the road and leaned against a black sedan. He pulled out a cigarette, smoked it for a good while, crushed it out and looked back at the house. Livy just wanted him to leave. After the man had gone, she sat out on the front porch, waiting for Sammy so she could tell him about the mysterious visitor who was hunting him. When he finally arrived, he was upset to see her still in her bathrobe and yelled at her. He got even madder, his round face getting red and sweaty when she told him about the man who had stopped by. She didn't like it when Sammy yelled. It upset her, and when she got upset, she did crazy things.
How many times have I told you, Livy, you are not to open that door?
He screamed.
But I didn't let him in, Sammy. I was good. I was good.
What'd he look like, this man?
Livy described him, which seemed to trouble Sammy a lot, because he started swearing under his breath, something he never did in front of her, just in private when he thought she wasn't listening. Sammy let out one good curse word and stomped inside. She started rocking, troubled that he had shouted at her. She rocked harder and harder, listening for what she knew he did every night in the same order. Take a shower, get a cold beer, turn on the TV to watch the news. Then, at exactly 7 p.m., he would call her in for supper, which lately had been nothing more than macaroni and cheese, sometimes a piece of cornbread with white beans and onions. Livy was getting tired of such slim pickings and asked him why they couldn't have some meat every now and then. He pushed his chair away from the table, really angry, telling her how hard he worked, that money didn't grow on trees, that if she wanted a fancy steak, she should go out and get a job and see what it was like. Lately, he had been more and more this way, and Livy didn't know what had gotten into her brother. The phone rang, and she heard his voice drift to where she still sat on the porch. It sounded like some type of argument.
I don't have the money for you yet, but I will. I told you I would.
Livy didn't know who Sammy was talking to. He sounded angry, angrier than he had been at her. She covered a giggle, glad that he was mad at someone else. Besides, she wasn't going to let Sammy yell at her anymore. She'd show him. He was going to be on the phone for a while, she could tell, and now she had time to do what she had been wanting to do. Livy stood up, stretched, and started walking the trail up the hill to the bluff. The sky was still light, edged with purples and oranges, as she started singing Amazing Grace in screeching tones. As she passed each tree, she knocked on its trunk 3 times, her own superstition for good luck. Sometimes she'd kick a pebble, another omen, with the toe of her bedroom slipper to see how far it would go. If it went far, she was going to get everything she asked for. The farther, the better. When she reached the mouth of the cave, something inside her felt afraid, but also excited, as if that big black hole in the hill was pulling her in. The coolness hit her face, making her smile. She walked inside the shadows and yelled,
Hello! 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 Hello!
the word bouncing off the cave walls. She went deeper inside and stood there, looking around. What was Mac Johnson hunting here? She walked a little bit more, unable to see in the shadows, and stumbled on a rock. Before she knew it, she had tripped on another rock and lost her balance, toppling over and landing face first in the dirt. She felt as if she had been slapped, her mouth and cheeks smarting, and the smell of must and bat dung filling her nose. She lay sprawled on the ground, a sharp pain shooting up her leg. Every time she tried to move, the throbbing got worse. She started to cry, tears and snot running down into her mouth, and began to yell.
Sammy! 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 Come get me! Come get me! Help! Help! Help!
All she heard was her own voice and the sound of an old hoot owl outside. The faint rays of the setting sun gave her some light. Soon it would be dark and she would be alone. She looked around, sniffling. She pushed up against a nearby boulder to see if at least she could sit up. When she touched the rock, her fingers felt something strange, like deep grooves. She put some spit on her hands and wiped off the mud that had dripped from the ceiling and coated the rock. There were marks on it, man-made marks. What the devil did they say? She poked her face into the boulder, squinting her eyes, wishing she had more light. Finally, after concentrating, she saw the initials LS and an arrow pointing to the right toward one of the long, narrow tunnels. LS? Who was LS? Had she found something important? Something that Mac was hunting? Or was it something that some kids had done years ago, messing around in this cave? No matter, nobody would ever know if she died in this God-forsaken place. And death now crossed her mind in a sorrowful way. The pain in her leg was getting stronger, and she wished she hadn't been upset with Sammy. The last thing Livy remembered was blackness and more blackness, until she started shaking in the cold dampness and passed out.
We hope you enjoyed part 4 of AIRT's production of Lorene on the Lam by Marie Elena Zuniga. For more stories, visit veronicapresents.com. You can help us grow our audience by rating and reviewing this show. Lorene on the Lam is available in print and ebook editions on Amazon.com. Thanks for listening.